Your book that you wrote, In the Eyes of a Monarchy, that transparent accounting is dangerous, they think. So, but this may be true for like many Taiwanese enterprises.
Sure.
They keep two account books.
Absolutely.
So what do you think are the up and downsides of such phenomena?
I would say most companies don't give a clear picture of their accounts on their books. Many do, but many also don't. In America, the standards for balance sheets are very, very low. They don't have to show all of their liabilities over time on their balance sheet. So if they've invested or they've just bought a company that made a risky investment, sometimes they don't have to show that on their balance sheets. I don't think it's good. I think transparency is good. The question is why do Taiwanese companies keep two sets of books? Is it for tax reasons? Is it also to try and ward off the competition? Historically, this is one of the oldest methods in the world. The Medici kept two books. In late medieval and Renaissance Italy, everyone kept two sets of books. They kept the books they would show to the tax collectors, and they kept libri segreti, secret books. And those were the books you didn't show. That's very bad for investment, though. One of the things I know that if you're in private equity or you're a big investor and you go to a country, you don't necessarily trust the books. You go yourself and you look at the company and you go over the papers yourself. And someone who's very good can audit themselves. But if it looks like a company is cheating too much, you don't want to take the risk because you can't invest in something that turned out to be a bad company. I would say that this is a practice that needs to everywhere, because America does it too. I think successful companies should be proud of their books. And I think that is always a bad sign that you're hiding your books. You don't want to give away your trade secrets, but you definitely want to show exactly where you stand if you are looking for outside investment. And also, you do have to pay your taxes honestly. I do believe that. It's not an easy thing to do, we all know that, but in a democracy, when people stop paying their taxes, things fall apart.
Many of our readers want to know how you bookkeep. And can you tell us a little bit about it and what changes had it brought you?
I am not a trained accountant, okay? And many accountants point this out to me, although I did write this book and trained accountants didn't. So it means we all have different skills. I could see something that the trained accountants couldn't see, which is this history. The accounting is fantastic. I mean, now that I know it and use it, I mean, you're walking blind through life without it. I mean, everything we're doing here is being accounted for either badly or well by someone. And your phone, your cell phone, is always accounting everything all the time. How much data you're using, where you are. I don't like that so much. But everything is being accounted for by your phone. So this is the phone, the cell phone is a massive accounting machine. But most young people now don't know how to account or do double entry accounting, the best kind of accrual accounting, which is accounting over time, which takes into account not just income and expenditures, but also assets and liabilities and investments over time, because we know that money changes over time.
Yes.
That $100 today is not going to be worth the same in 6 years. It always is moving. It's like sand. Money's like sand in the wind. It's always moving. If you leave it, it moves. So accounting helps you deal with that question. But it also makes you look at things in terms of movement. To buy a house is not to own a house. The house is always breaking down, losing or gaining value. So you need to account for all the movement of the house, the upkeep, the value or the loss of value. All of these things need to be accounted for. Until very recently, anyone that owned property knew how to do basic accounting. At least in Europe, this was a basic method. I know in Asia as well, I've seen Japanese account books that were almost of the level of double entry accounting from the 17th century. I mean, the Chinese and the Japanese almost got there. They didn't fully get there, but there was very high level accounting. Anyone who owned anything accounted for it. Today, most young people don't know how to do that. which I find really quite extraordinary and even scary. And I'm having my two daughters, who are much more focused towards art and literature, they will begin in 2 weeks taking accounting classes. Because what I learned is that if you are good, for example, at art and literature, you will be much stronger at that if you manage yourself well. And many artists and philosophers don't know how to manage their own goods, and so they end up with nothing. Yes. So for someone like myself, who's involved in the culture, the world of culture, I think that it's very important. So for example, this is a gift I give to my daughters.
So you mentioned basic accounting. So is it the basic, is it easy and simple enough for like young people who they don't have any idea about accountants at all to learn?
It's not that easy. You can't just learn it in a day. You can learn checkbook accounting very quickly. That's just addition and subtraction, income and expenditures. This is what's in your bank account.
Yes.
The stuff has come in, the stuff has gone out. That's not what this accounting is. Double entry accounting means your expenditures and your income have to balance, but it also means that there's accrual accounting, which looks at what the money will look like over time and takes into account your assets, so that's what you own, right? Yes. But also your liabilities, what you will have to spend and what you owe in the future, or what kind of depreciation, how things like your car, for example, you own a car. Well, the day you buy that car, it loses a huge chunk of its value the minute you open the car and you sign the papers. So what will that car be worth over time, and how much will it cost to keep the car running? We now know from accounting that cars are often not worth it. They cost a fortune to maintain. So it becomes a luxury and a pleasure rather than an economic necessity. Young people can learn accounting. I don't understand why they don't learn it in school. It would take a few months to learn basic, let's say, financial accounting. I don't understand why it's not in every school. After the war, in places like America, and my assumption is places like Taiwan, I don't know this, they taught this as a part of home economics after the Great Depression and the war, because people didn't have enough. They had to manage their food supplies and things like your fuel in your home so carefully that you had to account for everything to make sure you didn't lose anything. So they taught home economics, which now seems kind of a lowly thing. No, managing your home well, whether you live in a small apartment or a room or a big house, managing that is the key to your survival. So I think this is a basic thing we've lost. We need to get it back. We shouldn't put it in the hands of professionals. We all should do it ourselves like people did before.
So since you mentioned home, to hold the account book is to be empowered, right? So let's look at the modern family. So who do you think should be in charge of the account book to let the family to make the right decision?
Well, there is a huge history of that, by the way. There are famous historians, Amanda Vickery in England, she's a famous historian who's on TV. She's written the best material on this. In the 18th and 19th century, women in Britain were supposed to keep some of the account books, but men kept the major part of the account book. And for example, women didn't account for the meat supplies, but sometimes women would buy some clothing and be scared that their husbands would find it in the account books, and men would spend things also that they didn't want to know, and there were big conflicts. History has shown that in a household, but there are many different kinds of households, it's better to have it be transparent, just like in a company or a country, and people should all know to some extent what's going on. Now, in a couple, you might want to have your own money that you don't, that the other person in your relationship doesn't know about. That's your business. But if you're running a household together, it's very, very important to have a transparent account and that you audit the books together.
So transparent, but so no one should keep the book to her or himself, right?
Well, I mean, it just depends. I mean, it depends how much you trust the person that you live with. You know, I mean, I, for example, want my daughters to become good accountants so they can take care of my finances for me. Will I trust them in the future? I mean, yes, to a certain extent, but they might have luxuries that they like, and they might, you know, they could use the books. You never know.